Hey guys, welcome back to the studio. My name is Ed, and I'm an artist here in Venice, Florida. And today we're going to start the sixth video in our series of videos that are aimed at increasing your drawing skills. Now, one of the things I love as an artist is taking that flat piece of drawing paper and turning it into a new world, right? We're taking like that thin piece of paper and we want to create all this illusion of depth and space and actually put it into that paper, right? So whether you're drawing from real life or from your imagination or even copying from a photograph, we're trying to put as much depth or space into that drawing as possible. Now today we're going to start taking a look at that. We're going to talk about some pointers. I'm going to give you some pointers and things to look at when you're shading. And then we're going to take a look at a couple exercises that are aimed at increasing your dexterity in how you handle your drawing pencil. So guys, why don't you sit back, relax, and enjoy. Thank you. Hey guys. All right, so when we started this video series, I gave you a quote from Maria Montessori. And she said that in order to confer the gift of drawing, we need eyes that see and hands that obey. So what we started to do in these video series is kind of delve into what does she mean by that, eyes that see, in a practical sense. How exactly does an artist see? What does that mean? And when we started to look at contour drawing, we found that an artist really needs to learn how to look carefully at the little bumps, the little curves, all the little details along the edges of objects, which is the contour. Then we started looking at gesture drawing, and we learned that an artist needs to not only see the little details, but an artist needs to see what's happening in the big picture, the whole object at one time. So today, we're going to see that an artist also needs to be able to perceive or see value, right? Value is pretty much how light or dark something is. So an artist is going to use value, light and dark, light and shade. He's going to use those things to create that illusion of depth and space that we're all looking to create in our drawings. So what I'm going to do to kind of help illustrate this point, I'm going to bring up, I'm going to show you a painting by an artist of a still life. We're going to kind of pick it apart a little bit and see the different components in the drawing and kind of analyze it and see how did he use these things to create that sense of depth. So let me bring up this photo and we'll get started. Okay, guys, so I brought up a nice photo of a still life here. It's kind of an interesting still life. And we're just going to kind of take a look at this and see how the artist used light and shadow to help give this real great sense of depth here in his painting. So the first thing that an artist really needs to do and remember to do throughout the whole drawing is to know where that light source is coming from. Okay, so that light source, as we look at this painting, we can tell that because of where everything has the most light, all the front of these objects, right? All these objects are kind of most well lit in the front here. We have a sense that this light is coming from behind and to the left. So now we know that the shadows, the cast shadows, should all be moving to the back and to the right. Okay, and we can see that. So all these shadows are moving in the same direction. Now that's important because as all these shadows move in the same direction, we start to see a rhythm that forms in the drawing. So rhythm is one of those really key things that help to make a drawing come alive. Now, rhythm is something we'll talk about in a later video, but at least for now, just keep in mind that your light source and your cast shadows all should move in the same way. It should be consistent throughout your whole drawing. Thing that we're going to notice is that you're going to have the really bright side of your objects like so, but as that object turns in space, as that object turns away from the light, or in here, as that object turns away from the light, we're going to see it's going to gradually get darker in value. And it's going to get darker in value gradually until we come to a point in which all of a sudden it looks like it's about at this point on this object. This is called the terminator. So we're now entering into pure shadow. The light isn't affecting the object anymore past this point. And we kind of come into this area here. So the darkest areas of an object, or even like this object, as we move away from the light, this dark area here is called the cast shadow. I'm sorry, the core of the shadow. The cast shadow being the shadow on the ground. The core shadow, and that's usually the darkest part of your drawing, with the exception of what's called the crevice shadow. Now, in the crevice shadow, that's this area right here. It's usually where there's no reflected light. It's going to be at the very bottom. It's going to be like right here, right here. This crevice shadow in here, it's going to be like the really darkest darks. And then, really important is the reflected light. So sometimes beginners, they make they overlook this a little bit, but they'll say, well, if the light's coming from here, I'm going to shade my whole object. It's going to get darker and darker until on the other side is the darkest. And for some reason, the drawings are kind of lacking a little bit of depth. And the reason being, we can't overlook the reflected light. So you can see that happens in this object. We have some reflected light here, or in this book right here, we have some reflected light. And what that does, it really helps to define the shape of the object, and that, you know, if this was all black here, it would be like a hole, right? And we wouldn't really get that depth anymore. So we want to see that reflected light. And it's something that we should look for. Over here, we can just get a real slight sense of reflected light there, which is really important. So one other tip for beginner artists is that, generally speaking, we can render an object really well and take a lot of time, and we can do it near perfectly. Well, maybe not the beginner artist near perfect, but we can do a great job rendering, but we only render really lightly. So if you're one of those artists that tend to do a lot of shading, but only use like the light tones and never really get too dark, your drawing isn't going to have the power, the strength that it could have. So when you see like an artist like this, he has all the values ranging from the lightest to the darkest and everything in between. So when you do a drawing, we want to try to get as many values as we can. If everything is really light, the drawing just tends to get a little washed out. So if that's you, see if you can start pushing some of those darks in certain places, and it's going to help a lot. And another really important thing to remember is that all of our shadows have a particular shape. Okay, some people get in the habit of just kind of darkening areas in their drawing without really looking at the contour of that shadow. Now it's the contour of that shadow that's really describing what that object is and how it looks. And it's that contour, that shadow, that's really kind of showing that sense of depth and space. Another really important thing to remember is that your cast shadow, the cast shadow, is always the sharpest and darkest next to the object that's casting that shadow. So the further a shadow gets from the object, it's going to start to kind of blur and get a little bit lighter. Okay, so those are the really some major key points to remember. Number one, we need to be consistent with the direction of the light and the cast shadows that are created. Number two is to really try to remember to look for that reflected light. Okay, we want to remember that the shadows have particular shapes, as we especially in these really awesome metallic, any kind of metallic object. That's super important. And that the shadows are sharpest right next to the objects. Okay, now also really important, try to show a nice wide variety of values. So we don't want to just tend toward the very light areas. We don't want to just have it all dark, but if we have a nice balance between very light, very dark, and everything in between, you have a really awesome drawing. So what I'd like to do now is just show you a couple exercises that we can do at home there to just kind of help give your fingers a little bit more dexterity and practice in how to shade. All right, so let me get that set up and we'll get started. Okay, so like we always say, we need eyes that see, but we also need hands that obey. So along that line of thinking, I'm going to show you two little exercises that you can do, that you can practice to kind of either warm up or just kind of help give your hand that dexterity or that sensitivity that it needs to do some shading. So the first little exercise is to just set up for yourself a little rectangle. Now the idea is to learn how much pressure to put on your pencil to get either a dark line or a light soft line. So the idea is to shade this rectangle without any lines or gaps in between. We want a real nice, smooth, gradual change going from dark to light. So it's a little bit tricky. It's a little more tricky than it sounds. And we just start at the one end. And we're going to kind of go as dark as you can. And then as you move down the rectangle, we just kind of try to get lighter and lighter. So you're going to start just applying less and less pressure on that pencil. And you're just going to kind of gradually get lighter and lighter. Now, some people, when they shade, they like to use a blender. They'll even use their finger, a paper, one of those little paper blenders. Look, whatever works for you, works for you. That's awesome. So personally, I kind of tend to I like to just use my pencil and that's it. But like I said, there is no right and wrong. We just do what works for you. So all the way at this end, we should have nearly no pencil mark and just gradually getting darker here. So you can just keep working it and keep working it if you'd like. I'm using a 2B pencil. You can step it up. And if you want to try to get even darker, go with a softer lead. So a softer lead, you'd be going into the Bs. So this is a 4B. So that's pretty soft. we can get even darker, and then just gradually bring that into the light area as well. Okay, guys, so that's the idea with that exercise. The next exercise, if you have a compass, that's great. If not, you can just do it by hand. But create for yourself a, oh boy, circle. This pencil is too long. So create for yourself a pencil, a circle, and we're going to turn this circle into a sphere. If you need to download maybe a photo of a sphere from the internet or something to kind of help you understand what it looks like, by all means, do whatever you need to. But just keep in mind, we're going to choose wherever your light source is, and that's going to be the lightest part of your sphere. And then opposite that light source, you're going to have your cast shadow. Now the shape of that shadow is kind of important, right? So I'm making kind of an oval. So this is going to be the lightest area of the sphere. And then as the sphere turns away from the light, we're going to get a little bit darker and a little bit darker until we have right about this area. We're going to have the core shadow. That's where it's going to be the darkest. And right about here at this point, we're going to have some reflected light. So that's not going to be quite as dark as the core shadow. And that's going to be lighter. And that shadow in there. Then as it moves toward the light, we're going to get a little bit lighter. And we're going to want to have that full range of values. Now, shading a sphere looks really simple, but you'll see as you start, it's extremely difficult. It's really not an easy task, not an easy thing to do. So let's put it this way: if you can shade a sphere well, you can shade anything. So it's really great practice to do. Okay, so that's pretty much the gist of the exercise. So we have our source of light, and we have our cast shadow opposite our light. We have the core shadow, the darkest area of the sphere here. We have some reflected light going up at the sphere at that point. That's about it. All right, guys. So look, I hope you enjoyed that video. If you have any questions or comments, let me know. I'd be happy to answer them for you. And well, have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next time. Bye.